Okay, so again, if we're writing a proof, honestly, when you do it on your own, there's not going to be reasons. Stop, please. There's not going to be reasons filled in for you. Stop, please. Today, we're going to give you some of them to kind of help you step through it. Okay, so notice, nothing is marked on the picture. Okay, it's blank right now. We're going to use the given information. We're going to mark it down on the picture. We're going to write it in the proof because it's something that was given to us. We are all going to end with what you're trying to prove. That's how you end the proof. You start with your given. If you need to add anything else like we just talked about on the conclusion page, that's something we can add to the picture. But again, our end result for right now is to finish with two triangles congruent. So if you need to, you can add color to the picture. Like I said all along, you don't have to. It's an option. But if I'm looking at my picture for this particular problem, I notice I want to prove triangle FAN, this one in purple, is congruent to triangle GAN. So how many pairs of congruent parts do I always need? Three. Okay. So the way we start this proof is what's given. So on the givens here, the first one is segment FA is congruent to segment GA. So I'm going to mark it on the picture. Segment FA, it's a segment, so it gets a tick mark. That's congruent to segment GA, it gets a tick mark. So what does that refer to? A pair of sides or a pair of angles?
Sides.
Sides. Okay, so if you need to, you can keep track in that little box there. So we got the first part of the given written down. So next we're going to state the second one. Angle GNA is a right angle. GNA. I'm going to abbreviate RT for right. I'm going to put my angle symbol. So how do we mark a right angle in the picture? With a box. Okay, so angle GNA is the right angle on the right side. Now notice, my reason is given. These were filled in for me. Okay, we have a third piece of given information. So again, we have angle FNA is a right angle as well. Okay, so we talked about before, we always need 3 pairs of parts, right? Technically, we had 3 given, but did you notice the last 2 given were both talking about angles, so I don't count that twice. Okay, so do I have enough right now marked in the picture to prove the triangle's congruent? No, but what's something I can add to the picture? A side, that side that they butt up against. So we can add in that empty box there, we can say segment AN is congruent to segment AN, because it's segment AN in both triangles. And if you need to, you can look back on your notebook. We said that is the reflexive property. So again, just a little thought. Do not mark anything on the picture until you actually write it down in the proof, because some people end up skipping steps by accident because they mark everything down but they forget to write it. Okay, so now, do I have enough to prove the 2 triangles are congruent?
No.
Yes.
What's my method going to be then? Some of you said yes. Okay, but side angle or angle side doesn't work. If it's a right triangle, we call it HL. So in the last one, we're going to put triangle FAN is congruent to triangle GAN. And my reason is hypotenuse leg. So the last step of every proof you're doing should be whatever you're trying to prove here. So here it says we're proving triangle FAN is congruent to triangle GAN. That's what that last step should always be, whatever you're trying to prove.
So then why is the givens, those 3 given boxes, what do you use those for?
Nothing, they were giving.
I've put them down for you.
Oh.
If I had to fill it in completely myself, I would actually have to write the givens in.
So we're going to the next
Yep.
back page?
We're going to go to number 2. Okay, questions on this one?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on to number 2 then. Now, the reason for these, some of them are blacked out. Do you see in this one it has some boxes kind of blacked out here? that means you don't need this. For formatting purposes, stop please. For formatting purposes, I didn't want to have to shrink the picture down, so I kind of blacked out a box if you don't need it. You see how this one has some grayed out? You're not going to fill in that step. Okay, so in this particular problem, we are trying to prove, it says that triangle FAS is congruent to triangle NAG. So FAS is the one on the left, and the other one on the right is triangle NAG. So I want to prove those two triangles congruent. So if you need to, something you can always do is, you have to end down here with triangle FAS is congruent to NAG. If you need to write that in the beginning, that's what you can do. It's up to you. But we're going to end with whatever we're trying to prove. Okay, so we're going to start, just like we did the previous problem, with the givens. So where it says given here, the first one is segment FA is congruent to segment AN. And I'm going to mark it on the picture. FA is congruent to AN. No, that's good. I told you some of you probably were ready for this in the beginning, but not everybody. Now, to help some of you, I didn't do it in the first problem, but maybe I'll show you on this one. Since this is a pair of sides, to help you keep track, you could put an S in that little box there if that helps. You don't have to, but again, if that helps you out, then go for that. And again, my reason is given because it was given to me. Okay, now, do you see how there's a blank in the second box, but the third box is given?
Yeah, why is that?
Well, that's a good question. Since the third box is given, let's go ahead and write the other given. Hold on. So let's write the other given in the third box. Segment SA is congruent to segment GA. So we're going to mark it with tick marks. We're going to put 2 tick marks to show that it's different from the first set. Now we used both parts of the given. So we don't have 3 things. Remember, we always have to have 3 pairs of congruent parts to prove the triangle's congruent. So this is the point where you got to stop and look at your notebook if need be. What's something I can add to the picture? Vertical angles. We can add vertical angles at those 2 spots. So we can call them, again, one of them would be like angle FAS. That's congruent to angle NAG. That's a pair of angles, so I can put an A in the margin if I need to help keep track. And my reason is going to be just what we put down in our notebook. You're going to say something like, if 2 angles are vertical, then they are congruent. The easy thing about the given is the reason is given, if it was given to you. What you have to add to your picture are reasons for, like, the reflexive property, when you add a side is congruent to itself when they butt up against each other. Or you have to add, in this case, like vertical angles. Okay, so my reason for this one, triangle FAS is congruent to triangle NAG. What's my method on this one going to be? Side angle side. So your reason, at least for the time being, on these proofs at the end, is going to be side angle side. Or, I'm sorry, is going to be one of your methods, like side, 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 side angle side, angle side angle, angle angle side, or hypotenuse leg. Don't make something up. It's going to be one of those 5 that we have covered. So again, this is what you call more of a formal proof.
Number 4 ain't congruent.
Okay, hold on a second. We are not on number 4. Okay, questions so far? Okay, let's continue on. We still have number 3 at the bottom of this page, correct? Okay, so if you feel like you know what you're doing, work ahead of me.
I am.
Okay, so on number 3. Oops, I apologize. My paper skipped to number 4. Let's go back here. Number 3. So again, on this particular problem, we are trying to prove what at the end here, triangle FNA. I just traced it there in green. Again, you don't have to do that. That is congruent to triangle GNA. Okay, so if you want to, you can go ahead and fill in the last step. Triangle FNA is congruent to triangle GNA. And again, my reason at the end, it's going to have to be one of those 5 we talked about. So just like the previous problems, we're going to start with the given. So in this particular problem, the first given is segment FA. There we go. Is congruent to segment GA. There we go. So segment FA would be, and segment GA would be those two segments in the picture. Again, to help you keep track, please mark it on the picture once you write it down. That way, again, helps you keep track of what you've got. Since that's a pair of sides, you can put an S in that small box to help you keep track. Okay, next, we're going to put the second given. So we've got angle FAN is congruent to angle GAN. Okay, it's a pair of angles, so I can put an A in the margin to help us keep track. Angle FAN and angle GAN are those two angles at the top, up here. So again, at this point, based on the given, we have two pairs of congruent parts. We've got a pair of sides, and we've got a pair of angles, so we need something else. But again, notice, these two triangles butt up against each other, so we can add this shared side to the picture, this reflexive step. So we can say segment AN is congruent to segment AN. My reason, again, if you need to look back at your notebook, it's the reflexive property. So again, it's a pair of sides, so we can put an S in the margin to help us to keep track. So if I'm looking at the end here, I've now got three pairs of congruent parts. Okay, so why are my two triangles going to be congruent then?
Side to side.
Side angle side. Okay, does everybody feel like they've got this somewhat down? Okay, let's go to one of the end ones, and I'll let you do some of the easier ones on your own here.
We do 7.
Number 7?
Yeah.
Okay, let's scroll on to number 7 then. This one here. We'll do number 7 together, and I'll have you finish the other ones on your own to see how you do. Okay, so on number 7, it would help, especially in this particular problem, to trace the triangles you are proving congruent. So if we look at this last statement here, we are trying to prove that triangle NSG is congruent to triangle GAN. Now the nice part about these proofs is that you're not guessing. You know which triangles you should be focused on. Okay, so I'm going to take some color and trace it. Triangle NSG is this one here in maroon. And let's do some blue for the other one. We'll do triangle GAN in blue. So this is one of those pictures that has the overlapping triangles. So again, the positive note about these proofs, when you're doing proofs, you will always know how it's going to end. So especially now, I know a lot of you struggled when there were overlapping triangles and you weren't sure which ones you should be focused on. At least in these proofs, it's going to tell you at the end which triangles you're trying to prove congruent. Does that make sense? So there shouldn't be a guess. So I want these overlapping ones congruent. I can ignore that top part of the picture by F. It's not really needed in this problem. Okay, so we're going to start with the givens. So the first given says segment NA is congruent to segment GS. So we're going to put a tick mark on NA and one on GS. That's a pair of sides, so we can put an S in the margin to indicate that. So right now at this point we have one pair of congruent parts. And again, we always need 3 to prove triangles congruent. Okay, so next we're going to do the second part of the given, which says segment AG is congruent to segment NS. Okay, that's another pair of sides. So I can mark an S in the margin for that. So again, AG is this long blue one and NS is the long maroon one. So right now we have 2 pairs of sides marked in the picture, written down as given information. Now, just like I keep saying, we always need 3 pairs of congruent parts. So the question is, we ran out of givens. So there's something that we have to be able to add to the picture. Now, before you say anything, I see vertical angles in the picture, yes, but are they actually angles of the 2 triangles that I want? No, so we can't add vertical angles. What could we add to the picture? A shared side. Do you see how I trace segment NG in both like a maroonish color and a blue? So we can mark segment NG is congruent to segment NG. That's a pair of sides, so I can put an S in the margin. And since it's a shared side, my reason, if you need to look back at your notebook, that's the reflexive property. Okay, so at this point, you should hopefully notice you've got 3 pairs of congruent parts. That's enough to state your triangles are congruent. So what's my method going to be? Side, side, side. Good. Okay, anybody got any questions? So there's a few to do, not many, right? We did what, 1, 2, 3, and 7. So you have 4, 5, and 6 that are not completed yet. Is that correct? Okay, so I would like you on your own today to look at 4, 5, and 6. That's your classwork. If you don't finish it in class, it's going to be considered to be your homework.
You go, what, this?
Hold on to it, please.
You got
You did not even finish number 7.
They're all filled out.